What I'm going to present for you today is how to develop a professional practice environment, which is a key, I believe, to successful leadership. I had a couple of visions here that I felt that I wanted to develop and to be able to change work environments so that nurses would really want to work at the hospital where I was a leader. So one of the big things was, how on earth do you do this? How do you develop a professional work environment where nurses really want to work? And the second thing, of course, you know, is my love and passion, and how you develop a culture of evidence-based practice, which is not easy to do. Now, Thomas Edison said that vision without execution is hallucination. And I'm not going to hallucinate up here. I am going to try to actually give you facts here about how to do this. When I set out to do something, what do? I search for the evidence. And so when I was thinking about I'm going to go backwards away here to the late 70s and early 80s. And I was a young leader, and I was trying to figure out, how do you develop this professional work environment where nurses want to work? And guess where the literature took me to? Dr. Joyce Clifford. And she was at Beth Israel Hospital. Some of the young ones in this audience may not know her, but all of us that are older do know her. And she was really the icon for a place where nurses wanted to work. And if you think about the early 80s, we had a terrible nursing shortage. And yet in this hospital, she had a lineup of nurses just waiting to work there. I mean, she had so many applicants, she could not take them all. Interestingly enough, way back then, she hired only BSN nurses. Isn't that something? Guess what? She had a residency program. Where do you think I got that idea? She had a residency program. It was 2 years long. Believe it or not, nurses were paid less than the other nurses in the city until they finished the residency program. And still, she had so many applicants that she couldn't take them all. So that says something about her leadership. And she had great collaboration with her physicians, and that hospital was known for nursing really having a voice in what was happening in the organization, a voice in patient care. The other thing I learned from studying her was that she had a unique partnership with her CEO, and I thought that might be pretty key for me to think about that too as I went on in my leadership. Then when I was looking for things about the evidence for evidence-based practice, again, you have to go back a ways. I'm a little older than some of you in this room, so going backwards, I searched for the evidence and who had this, who was doing this kind of work. And lo and behold, it was Dr. Jo Horsley and her work with the conduct and utilization of research in nursing, which occurred in the Michigan hospitals in the early 80s. She had a large grant to do this. And when I pulled up her work and studied it, I was just beside myself. My gosh, here it is. It's 1980, and she had policies and procedures based on evidence. I didn't know anybody else that was doing this. I didn't have a clue of anyone else doing it. Now, I was a master's student, and Dr. Desi Taylor was a professor who taught evidence-based practice in the early 80s. And it was very unusual, I found out later, for that to be taught. Most people were teaching the basics of research, and people were not teaching evidence-based practice. And she was really teaching this to us. And I would sort of be a challenging student at times and say, this is all theoretical. Who's really doing this? And she would come back to me and say, you're a chief nursing officer, do it. And I'd say, Dr. Taylor, I'm in a rural community hospital. And she said, that's no excuse. So I thought, okay, let's see what I can accomplish there. So what I've learned over time here is making a difference is really because you have a focus on professionalism. I saw that in Dr. Clifford. I saw that in Dr. Horsley. And it was a goal for me to try to get there. I think this is a key to making a difference in your work environment and also in your patient outcomes. I was in a rural community hospital, 30 to 40 beds, I started an evidence-based practice committee. I advise you, don't wait to do things until you have everything in place. You know, I started this committee. I was the only master's prepared nurse in this hospital. I had associate degree, I had a diploma nurse, I had one baccalaureate nurse on my committee. And we started to base our policies and procedures on research. And we used Dr. Horsley's work to be able to do that and to lead us. And it was really interesting. Without me saying a word, these nurses decided they wanted to go back to school. 4 of these nurses in this rural community hospital went back and got their bachelor's degree, and 2 nurses went on to get their master's. So you can see, just involving them in evidence-based practice, what that did for their professionalism. They really they knew they needed to do more to be able to fulfill that role. Another thing that I've learned along the way, I teach a class in executive leadership, and I teach DAC. And most of my students don't know too much about this, although it's out in the literature. But that is so important, I think, for evidence-based practice and for other projects we're doing as well. So you have to set the direction. If you're the manager, the director, the CNO, you have to set that direction, and you have to communicate that vision to the people that you're working with. Then you have to align things, and you got to get the structures and the processes in place so you can carry this work out, whether it's evidence-based practice or something else. And that's very, very important to do that. And then you have to have a commitment. Don't give up because the work's hard and because it is very rewarding. And the one thing with evidence-based practice, it will really improve patient outcomes, and it will also help you to recruit and retain nurses. But how many of you have been involved in a large project, and the commitment about 6 months, 9 months down the road, the project's no longer that great thing that you were working so hard on, you know? That commitment doesn't stay with you. So this is really, really important with evidence-based practice, and it is hard work, and you don't always get everything right, but you have to hang in there, and don't wait till you have everything perfect before you start. I sure didn't. I think magnet designation and magnet hospital work really helps to increase professionalism. I believe in that. I did this a little bit different, I think, than many people did when they decided that they wanted to try to achieve magnet. We had a C-suite retreat that occurred every year, and at this retreat, we would set the strategic goals for the next year, and we would allocate the resources, the dollars, the personnel to make that happen. So in the second year, I came to University of Colorado Hospital in '97, and in 1999, I took the goal of us achieving magnet. And of course, everybody in my C-suite didn't have a clue what I was talking about. So I had to do a PowerPoint presentation and to get them educated. And once that goal was selected for the next year, then we went out and we educated the staff about this. And we had PowerPoint slides, and we went from unit to unit and from department to department, so everyone would feel like they were involved. And I think assessing the environment, we looked at our magnet criteria and did a lot of work as to what was missing and filling in those gaps, and that made us a better place and a better place for people to work. A couple of things that came out of this magnet as we went along was we had a staff nurse council. I hadn't had one of those before, and I found that very important, and I ended up assigning myself as the administrative person for that council because it really gave me insight into what was happening on the units, and they weren't afraid to tell me. So that was a good thing. When they had problems, they brought that to that staff nurse council, so I really appreciated that. And then I didn't see as much collegiality among the managers, and so I also developed a manager council at that time, and I think that's something that really strengthened professional practice in our organization as well. I do believe that education is such a big component of a professional environment. I think we have to set forth a plan. You have to increase that educational preparation of your nurses in your organization wherever you work. And people say, I can't do this. I'm in a small rural hospital. I don't think rural Iowa is any different than rural Colorado or rural anywhere. You know, I realize those community hospitals are there and they're a great asset to those communities, those rural communities. But it's important to our profession. Picking up what Mr. Sully said this morning, it is important to our profession, and that's what this is. This education increase has to happen. We have to have a model where we have more baccalaureate prepared new graduates. If we continue to prepare the associate degree and they do not go back to school, one of the things I worry most about is a severe shortage of faculty. And some of you faculty here probably think about that too. Because, you know, if that gets really bad, enrollments will be limited. And we've seen some of that already. So this is not, it's important for everybody, regardless of what kind of an organization that you work in. You have to set timelines for managers and directors to be prepared at the master's level. You need to provide tuition reimbursement. You know, all of you in leadership positions know this. And yet we have so many managers that are not prepared at that level. And I know that's a goal for Magnet as well. And I'm a believer in clinical ladders. You know, I was very fortunate when I went to the University of Colorado Hospital, and they did have one in place, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But when your clinical ladder rewards education, and it also rewards evidence-based practice, then it is really ingrained within your whole culture. So what does this professional practice environment work like? I've got a lot of staff in the audience, so I have to be very true to fact here, you know. So what does it actually look like? Well, over the span of about 15 years of nursing leadership, we developed a culture that embraced all of the structures and the activities that you need to support evidence-based practice. We were very fortunate to have someone come into our hospital and actually study our culture and to see if we really did have evidence-based practice ingrained in our culture. And they did lots of testing, and sure enough, that was their final thought. So I'm not hallucinating. It's actually been published that we have this culture of evidence-based practice. We have a very, very strong evidence-based practice committee and a research committee, and they meet monthly. And the people that are on that committee include staff nurses, it includes managers, it includes people from administration, and it's a very active committee. There's CNS's educators that are on committee as well, and we have a small cadre of research nurse scientists who work their hearts out, and they make so much difference to evidence-based practice in that organization. When we start out orienting nurses, their first day of orientation at University of Colorado Hospital, guess what they're taught? They are taught that we expect clinical nurses to use evidence in their practice. Our research nurse scientists give these presentations in orientation, and it is important that nurses know this. I had a letter that I wrote for Human Resources that when someone wanted to apply for a job, I asked them to send that out. And they sent it out to them, and the essence of this letter was, this is what we believe in. We have a professional practice environment. You will be expected to participate in evidence-based practice activities, and on and on and on. And at the end of the letter, I said, if this isn't the kind of nursing you want to practice, this may not be the right hospital for you to work in. So I was pretty upfront in that. Not everybody agreed with that letter, but I still think it was a good thing to do. Okay, you excel. That is the professional practice program that's the clinical ladder. That's what we call it. And nurses credential from level 1 to level 4. To get them ready for this credentialing to move up the step, there is an evidence-based practice boot camp that's offered by our CNSs, our educators, and our research nurse scientists. And it's a course to develop them from going to level 2 to level 3. And then so that they can do their projects. And then from level 3 to level 4, you have to be involved in research project, and you are mentored to participate in that. If there's one thing that probably makes our environment very alive and professional, it's journal clubs, and the staff who are here can speak to that. They are live everywhere. On the units, you can also attend a journal club online. You can use that for your evaluation and meeting the standards that you have to meet. But it's a really important thing, and it always keeps that literature in front of you, regardless of what that specialty is. So that's very important. We do require an annual evidence-based practice nursing competency. I don't know of any other organization. I've been searching to try to find someone else that does that. And I think we might be unique in that. All clinical nurses have to complete a competency, and then that must be completed before their manager does their evaluation. And the Research Council that I talked to you about, and the Evidence-Based Practice Council, decide what that competency will be each year. So that it's also important to ingrain this within our culture. And the nurse residency program. Wow, we started that in 2002. And they have to complete an evidence-based practice project in that last 6 months of their residency. And I know some of you in the room have the same residency I'm talking about. That has made such a difference in our organization, because just think about this. We have about 60% of our staff now, since 2002, who have gone through a residency program and have done an evidence-based practice project. Now just think about how that shares that culture of looking to the evidence to be sure you're providing the best care possible. So the residents, I just came back from a meeting. I was just blown away by the projects that they had done. You would not believe it. It's so far ahead of what I was at that age. And it's just so wonderful to see that happen for our profession. I also really encourage people to publish. I think that if nurses in the clinical area do not publish, then that great knowledge, that clinical knowledge, doesn't get shared with the healthcare community. And we don't have very many nurses in the clinical area publishing. So that's something we work hard on. We mentor them. We've got a manager in the room right now who just lead author on a publication that's in Jonah in March. So we'll give a little credit to her as well. So that is just really important, and it's something that I find when I'm teaching in my master's classes for the program called I Lead. Nurses aren't very good at writing, and they need a lot of mentoring, and I make them in this class finish an article and submit it to a journal by the end of the class. That's a requirement for the class. So hopefully I'm preparing people to better work in your environments. Our policies and procedures are amazing. They are evidence-based. The level of evidence is recorded on that as well, not just listing all of the publications that they are based on, but the level of evidence that supports those policies and procedures are there. I don't know if anybody else is doing that either. There might be some in the room, so I'm anxious to hear from you. We have a yearly evidence-based practice and research conference, and this gives nurses a great opportunity to present their work and to also do posters. So that is something that just helps us to keep the spirit going, as you say. We highly recommend that people get the specialty, and it is just spreading across the institution to see that happen, because the more people you have get their certification, the more the others want to do that. We have a tremendous support for advanced education. One of the things that is very active in this organization is a leadership rounding. And I really do feel that that's a professional responsibility. As a CNO, I rounded on the units. My CEO did as well. We often did that together, talking to the staff, talking to the patients. Our managers do that, our directors do that. It's in their job descriptions. And if they don't do that, they're in trouble. So we really, really push that, and I think that makes the environment more professional. The other thing that, we continue to work, obviously, on our trying to meet our standards and exceed our standards for magnet, and that's an ongoing job. We have a wonderful magnet coordinator that gets everybody fired up and ready to go, but this is a lot of work as well, and I think that increases your professionalism too. Now, one of the things that I used to do when I was in that CNO role was to take my leadership team to AONE, and I can't tell you how much we learned and the ideas we would bring back, but also how much fun we had. So several of them are in the audience, and those are some of my best times when we would come together and be at AONE. And it really does build team cohesiveness if you can do those things together with your leadership team. We do participate in the DAISY Award, and I think that's one of the neat things that has come along in the last few years. And it is a method to recognize those people at the bedside. Many of you are involved in that as well. But it's just another method of professionalism that you can really recognize people and celebrate and celebrate and celebrate. Now, I think if you have a leadership team that's focused on developing and maintaining this professional practice environment with increased education, with evidence for your practices and what you do, I believe you will be a successful leader. And I think that your organization will be a place where nurses do want to work. So I'm going to stop there and I will take questions.